We are just starting off. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you. We are sort of just a crazy time right now, and we really appreciate everyone sort of coming on board and really sort of hanging out with us, having a conversation about some of the things that are really important. My name's Anietie Ekanem. I'm with OneBayview. Many of you get the newsletter OneBayview Insider. Really, that's geared towards just in an email format, trying to sort of share all the great things that are sort of going on in our neighborhood. OneBayview Speaks, which is this webinar series, is really sort of centered around how do we share some of the issues, concerns, but also answers, and the important people that are sort of making things happen with our neighbors in the neighborhood. And for me, it's really important. I actually started it a while ago because I had, in my job, I had the flexibility of being able to go to meetings. And what I noticed that a lot of them were at 10, 11, 1, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And they somehow expected public feedback in the midst of all that when people are working. And that got translated into people didn't care, and that's just not the case. People in the Bayview and District 10, Potrero, Visitation Valley, we really do care about our neighborhood. We have a long list of people who have sort of fought for decades to make things as good as they are today. So yes, people care, and I wanted to sort of create a forum to help people connect, understand and be informed in a way that actually made sense for their schedules, and thus OneBayview Speaks. And then we're here today, 3 weeks in to the mayor's order, but around the sort of coronavirus. Last week, thanks for those who joined us, we had Supervisor Walton on board as we sort of geared up and sort of started to live through the whole corona life, so to speak. And this week we have the opportunity to be with Captain Dangerfield of the Bayview precinct. And just want to sort of say thank you so much for being with us today. I know that you were on the line last week, and you were sort of chomping at the bit to sort of get here and sort of, really sort of help out as a steward of sort of safety in our neighborhoods. I know there's a bunch of other issues. And there are going to be a few things. One, we're really going to focus in on COVID and coronavirus. During this discussion, I know there are a lot of other things sort of going on, but this is going to be like the focus for today. Mm-hmm. And if time permits, we might get into other things. I also want to thank everyone who's sort of on board, who's with us for submitting questions. And I have a lot of them right here. So if I'm looking down, you know what I'm looking at. So there are just a lot of questions, a lot of things that people want to sort of know about. And with that, I just want to thank you, Captain Dangerfield, for coming on board. I personally met you a few years ago, at least. And I think it was probably at a night out, actually, at first, where we were rocking out, and you were actually doing a lot to sort of not only organize the event, but sort of help at the event and sort of even passing out food and things like that. So I just want to say thank you. So you've been around here for a very long time. I just want to hear more about you and how did you actually begin at the Bayview station and even as a police officer?
Well, I thank you for having me, Anietie. I'm more than happy to be able to talk to people in the Bayview and tell them what's going on with the police department and COVID-19. I first came to Bayview Station as an officer way back in the early 2000s, and I was on patrol working midnights, so nobody saw me. So I was working midnights when everyone else was asleep. I came back here as a lieutenant in 2000 and I think it was 2012. And then I went to community engagement. I was there for a while, and that's where I met you. And then I came here last July. It was actually July 1st that I actually came to Bayview last year. More than happy to be at Bayview. I grew up in the Bayview, right up there on Bridgeview Drive. That's where I started. And then I moved over to Gerald Avenue, then I moved over to the White. So I spent a lot of years in the Bayview. And when we say the Bayview, I'm talking about the police Bayview as a district. I know the lines, whether it's Patola or what, or So I spent a lot of time in the Bayview. I know a lot of people here. I still have friends and family that live here. So I do understand the Bayview. I do understand Black people. I understand that we're a different breed, and uh, we have to be educated in different ways than everybody else, and give a different level of understanding and a different level of policing. Is what I hope to bring for the overall public safety of Bayview.
That's great. And as we're sort of talking about COVID-19 and coronavirus, a lot of this sort of is the same for pretty much all the cities. So whether you're in Potrero or Visitation Valley, these are still the same rules that we all have to sort of adhere to.
Yes, it is. No one in the police department has never experienced anything like this. So, those terms of like, you're changing on the fly, you have to be very flexible. The rules keep changing about how the police are supposed to respond, what protective equipment we're supposed to wear, how do we deal with the public, social distancing. All these things are completely new to everyone in the police department, as well as everyone in the city. No one has lived or did anything in these times. It is very, very traumatic for a lot of people. It is very scary for a lot of people. And the worst part about it is devastating financially for a lot of people. We get that. We understand that. What is essential? What's not essential? All of these things are all new, and we're trying to figure it out all at one time. But the most important thing that we all have to remember, and this is what we're trying to tell the officers as well as everyone they come in contact with, this is a health crisis. It's not a police crisis. It's not a police state. It's a health crisis. And to protect us all, we have all changed from being more of law enforcement officers to public health officers, and making sure that everyone understands that this is a health crisis. As of yesterday, they just required officers when they're to be out to wear masks. That's a whole different look. And does that scare people? Well, it may scare people, but they're saying something as well. This is a health crisis, and officers come in contact with people. And now they're saying to people in the city, they should be wearing masks. Now, we're not in a position to enforce, give tickets or anything like that for not complying, but we are trying to educate people as best as possible to understand. This morning, a whole new list came out about essential businesses and now the steps that they have to take. And it's a whole list of things, which I listed in next door to everyone. And also, I'm trying to get it on Twitter, but it's kind of long, so I have to figure out how to do that. But it's a whole list of things, and you can go to SF.gov and look under COVID-19, and you'll see it for essential businesses. They got to make sure spacing is right. They got to make sure that they're cleaning and sterilizing things in their own businesses. So it's a lot on everyone, and it's new. And we understand people don't get it. We understand the shelter in place is hard, but it's hugely important that we stay indoors as much as possible if we're going to stop the spread of the virus. And that's kind of a different teach for some of the different populations in the Bayview.
Yeah. So let's just dive in. What are the rules around shelter in place?
So we want you to stay inside as much as possible. We know people need fresh air. We know people have to exercise and do things like that. But walk around your neighborhood, exercise in your neighborhood. And then while you're exercising, remember social distancing and staying at least 6 feet apart. And again, the suggestion from the CDC is that you might want to wear something to cover your nose and your mouth. And it doesn't have to be a surgical mask. It could be a scarf, anything like that, just so you're protecting yourself.
Yeah. Another question that we actually got was, how are police officers and emergency responders keeping themselves safe? Because,
well,
and I just want to chime in on that. It's really important, because if you guys aren't safe and you're taken offline, there are fewer people to sort of help the rest of us.
Right, and we've had 8 people taken offline here that had to self-quarantine based on the people that they had to come in contact with. That's 14 days for each one of those officers. So again, the police department is working to mitigate those things and have less officers have less contact. So one of the things they're doing is, if you notice, you see officers out there, they're not wearing a uniform like I'm wearing. They're wearing a BDU uniform, which is a cotton uniform. And the reason for that is cleaners are closed. So the officers have to be able to wash the uniform. So wearing the BDU uniform allows them to wash it more often, and so therefore it can get clean because these viruses can stay on the clothing. They're giving hand sanitizing wipes to wipe down all their gun belts, their radios, their body-worn cameras, the cars. They're being wiped down every single day at the beginning, at the end of each officer's shift. When they come in contact with people, they're wearing gloves. And so we're going through a lot of supplies, right? That's why it's needed. And I know a lot of people want to wear gloves and stuff like that, but they do have to think about when they're using them, they may be taking them away from some of the healthcare workers and the other first responders that must wear them or should be wearing them. Also, they're concerned about their own health. They don't want to get anything either. So they're trying to maintain their social distances. So they've changed the way we're taking reports. Usually if you had a burglary, they might go to the house, go all inside the house and see everything. Now they're asking the person to come outside and then keep the distance and then not have to go inside the house. We're limiting the number of officers that's going to go to a call. So if there's a hot call, like, some really call that requires a lot of officers, once that thing is calmed down, we're going to pull most of the officers off so that they're not all, if someone is exposed, they're not all exposed. So those are some of the things that we're doing. But we really need everyone's help to cooperate with that because it may be different from what they're used to. So we want everyone to can you call in your report? Can you call the station? Do you have to go to the station? We've even set up downtown and by way of dispatch. So if you call them, they're going to ask you a few more questions. And if that report can be taken over the phone, they're going to transfer you to some officers who's working inside and is going to take that report over the phone, opposed to exposing an officer to, someone that they don't know that may have. And we have to think that everyone may have the virus.
Thank you for that. Another question sort of came down the line around social distancing and enforcement. How is that being enforced? And I remember reading something that the mayor was even sort of talking about, like our parks, and if people don't get it together, those parks might close. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Some of the parks have been closed as a result of people not self-distancing. We don't have that many in the Bayview, but every day we get a few emails about some of the local parks around here. People may be playing soccer or they're playing basketball. It seems like nothing, but a basketball game is about 4, 5, 6 people in close contacts. That's what we're trying to avoid. And our role, again, as in the police department, is just education. Hey, social distancing, that's not one of the sports you should be playing, but we're not going to force people to stop. That's not our role. Our role is just to educate them, and hopefully they'll comply.
And then what can people do to sort of help you do your job better?
I think one of the great things that people could do is understand if they think like everybody they come in contact has the virus and they want to stay 6 feet away from that person. If you're going to go to the store, make sure you're bringing all your own equipment to wipe down what you need to, whether it be the shopping cart, whether it be the little, where you pay, the little device that you use to pay. Think about all those little things. Get what you need and go home. Don't just hang out, don't have a conversation, get what you need and go home. If you need to go to the drugstore and get your medicine, go get your medicine and then go home. Don't prolong your outside visits.
Mm-hmm. There were a couple of questions around sort of Third and Paloux, and there are a lot of people sort of congregating there. What can be done?
So it is a problem. I hear about it every day. What we've been doing this week is we've been stationing people fixed posts, which is very difficult to do. People do not understand how difficult it is to have officers just stand in one area. But we've dedicated for officers to stand in that one area to keep people moving, from them sitting at the flower thing at Mandel Plaza. It's just, we put out signs too. We got those big signs from DPW that say about social distancing. And we've also contacted the Department of Public Health because some of them need some other type of help that we can't provide. When it comes to alcoholism and things like that, we can't, they're not listening. But, if they're your family members, if they're your friends, help us out, tell them to stay home. Maybe they can go in their own backyard. I mean, I know people hate to be cooped up inside the house. I know it's very difficult. It's difficult for all of us, but we're in very difficult times and we will get through it. but we'll get through it together.